Hello and welcome to the HealthTech Marketing Show. I'm your host, Adam Chirinas. Today's episode is a fun one and a practical one. So if you've ever come back from HIMSS or Vive or any other big conference, and the first question you got was, so how many leads did we get? This episode is for you. I'm joined by two people who've forgotten more about how to create a great healthcare event than I will ever know. Amy Hamilton, one of my colleagues, she's an account director with Health Launchpad, has 20 years experience in healthcare IT marketing. And Pepper Fee, who is our design lead, brings more than 26 years of experience in brand, creative, and large scale and small scale healthcare trade show design. So we're going to dig into the big themes, the big strategic themes, but we're also going to get really practical. So buckle up. This is a fun one. I think back to my time running a health tech company, and whenever we go to HIMSS or any events, it was always like, how many leads we're going to get, how many leads we're going to get. And we're coming back, how many leads do we get? And so I do think that, part of the burden on the marketing leaders when it comes to trade shows is it's all about the leads. We know it's not all about the leads. So I'd ask you each, starting with you, Amy, is if you had to reframe what events should be about in one sentence, what would that be?
Events should be about building, growing, and maintaining relationships. That's how I would reframe it into one sentence.
That is pretty short but sweet. I like the notion of relationships. What about you, Pepper? How about you? How would you frame it?
I agree. I mean, of course, leads matter, but it's the experience that matters more. For many attendees that you meet at your event, it may be their first time experiencing me and the employees. It may be not their first time meeting everybody, but it might be their first time meeting everybody in person. And I think that what matters is, what did that whole experience and that relationship feel like? What did you take away from that? Yeah, what was the flow like? What were the demos like? Was there clarity to the story? Was it clear why this matters to me?
Amy, at what point does a theme become powerful? And at what point does it kind of get in the way, maybe being a gimmick?
Ooh, I'm probably not the best person to answer that because I love a theme. Whether it's a trade show or a party, I am there for the theme. But I think that the theme can get in the way, like to Pepper's point. If you can't decide on a theme, don't decide you're going to have a theme and then let the idea of a theme slow everything else down, because you can't land on one. You can't find one that fits what you're going for. And then all of a sudden you're behind on everything, your booth, everything, because this theme got in the way. So I think it only makes sense to really take a theme that's outside of your normal brand a bit, outside of, what you normally do, when it works, when you know that it ties back into that everyday brand or what the theme of the show is, and then let it carry you forward. Whenever that theme becomes a roadblock or seems to slow things down, or suddenly we need a whole new booth because we have a theme now, I would say ditch the theme. Don't get obsessed with this idea of a theme just so that you have to redo everything else, and everything else has to be sacrificed because of the theme.
I completely agree with Amy. If a theme isn't something that's, comes out of the story naturally, or you're not mapping to like what the overall event theme is, don't try to force it. Because as Amy said, if it doesn't come naturally to the folks at the event, then you're not going to be telling a good story. It shouldn't be something that you just like stick on there. A theme should be part of a longer journey to and from the event, I think. And if you can't do that, then just go with what you have.
That's a really interesting concept. Break that down a bit. That sort of notion of a journey. Is that you talking about the customer journey? That's a really interesting way of thinking.
Sure, yeah, because I mean, you want to start talking about, if you're going to a HIMSS or an RSNA, you want to start talking about what you're doing there and what you're going to be featuring well in advance of the event. And then you want to be able to come out of the event to continue your marketing to your attendees with messaging that maps to what you were talking about at the show.
I think that makes so much sense. If you aren't willing to talk about the theme or around the theme before, during, and after the show, it's not a good theme.
Right.
It can't just be this hard launch at the show I don't know, we're going to have lots of balloons in our trade show and we're going to tie the theme back to like balloons, whatever that might be. If it only makes sense in that moment, then it's not a good theme. So, and my proudest moment, I think, and the most fun and definitely a booth that people still bring up is MGMA was in San Francisco many years ago. And I think everyone was really excited about going somewhere new. It was not the classic trade show, New Orleans, Vegas, Chicago, Orlando. It was finally somewhere new. We felt excited to be there. And so we really wanted to lean into the place that we were at and give people something to take home from San Francisco that was more about San Francisco than it was about the trade show or even who we were. And so we really leaned into the San Francisco theme. We got people really excited about the fact that it was in San Francisco leading up to in our pre-show marketing. We hosted an event at a nice kind of traditional place that people would normally want to visit when they go to San Francisco. And then in the booth, we were actually live screen printing t-shirts that were San Francisco themed. So we had 3 or 4 designs that you could pick from. They were all super cute and quirky and San Francisco themed. One of them said, "What the fog?" It was really, really cute. And it was amazing because people came to the booth because they really wanted this cool piece of swag to take home to either themselves or their kids. But even better is they had to stand in line because it was a hot item. So we got lots of time with them while they were standing in line. We got to chat them up. We helped them pick which design they wanted. So we got to talk back and forth about what they liked, what attracted them to each piece. And then they had to come back and pick it up after. And they had already committed all of that time. So they were willing to, of course, they were going to come back for that cool t-shirt. So it wasn't only that this theme kind of tied through pre-show, at the show, our, event after the show, and our marketing after, but we had tons of time with people because of the way that giveaway required them to spend time with us. So not only did we have like record numbers of leads, because of course we scanned everyone that came in the booth, but we had lots of notes on every single lead. So it was almost like we were coming home with more qualified leads than we ever had before because we had a reason to stand there and talk to people.
Yeah.
We once had a make your own margarita bicycle.
A make your own margarita. What was that?
Basically, it was like a blender on a bicycle, and you come and you ride.
Power it.
You ride the bicycle. And you
think I saw that.
Yeah,
I think I saw that. It's really fun.
I know Amy thinks that I'm a little bit down on gimmicky attractions to the booth, but one of the things that I think that affected us a lot, aside from COVID, obviously, was the lack of being able to do giveaways so much at healthcare shows. So we became a little bit less fun over time, but that was one of the ones that I remember that was a really great attraction. And then once puppies, of course, that became a big thing probably within the past 10 years, having puppies at your booth.
These are long days. Everyone's on all day. And so give them a reason to just kind of stand in the booth and have fun and sprinkle in some, business conversation, get your at least few qualifying questions in there. They know you're there to do work. No one's upset about it, but they'll stay and they'll play. If you tie it back to a little surprise at the end, you'll be amazed at how long they'll stay. Don't just have swag just to have them. Nobody needs another pen with your company's name on it. I can promise you that. But what people do want is the requirements for leaving home for a few weeks or a few nights, which often is a gift for their children or a gift for their spouse or a gift for their teammates that are covering the extra work because they're out. And so I think if you can think about it from that perspective, not just really expecting someone to use that hand sanitizer that has your brand on it, I think you can really hit a home run with swag sometimes and create long-lasting impressions with people over giving them interesting things to take home. And if I think you take the kids' mentality or a local specialty mentality, like sending them home with that, that city's number one chocolate, that city's number one popcorn or whatever it might be, they're going to win whoever they give that to, or even if they eat it in their hotel room at night by themselves. They're going to remember that, and it's not going to be a burden to try to find place in their bag to take that stuff home.
I don't like the idea, like Amy said, also about swag for the sake of swag. I'm really big on sustainability, and I don't like the idea that we just spent a bunch of money on stuff that's going to get thrown out because it's cheap garbage, right? But like one of the better things that I saw as far as giveaways that I wanted to do at RSNA, and then they said we couldn't do giveaways anymore, was actual t-shirts that were made out of radiology film when that was still a thing, right? So this was basically a company
that's really clever.
Took recycled materials from all kinds of things, bottles and whatnot, but specifically they had one that was made out of radiology film. And the folks at RSNA, they love like nerdy gifts.
That's something that I don't think we were planning on talking about, which I think is worth it because it is a hot topic, and that is uniforms in the booth.
Oh, talk to me about that.
I feel like it's worth talking about because as the marketing person, often in the booth, often the only marketing person in the booth, I'm always like, did you see they all had matching orange tennis shoes? We should have that. I always think it's such a cool idea. And Pepper, I'd love your thoughts on this. But I think in these big open booths where it's kind of unclear where they begin, where they end, and it's even more unclear who the heck works here, I think that what your team is wearing can play a really important role in that kind of a situation where if I just have to find the person in the bright purple shirt and they're going to answer my questions, it helps a lot. And then you can be a little more open with your booth, a little less obvious where, the stop and chat kind of spot is. And it can feel a little more like roam free, and you'll find the person that you need to get your answers from. So I don't know, Pepper, how do you feel about it?
I agree. I think uniforms, or at least a branded polo, are important. There's so many people in these booths sometimes. And again, to your point about the open floor plan, if you want answers, you need help, you want to know who to go to. And I think it's also just a nice professional look.
One of the smartest examples of that, this goes back a few years, is when I had my clinical communications company. One of the biggest competitors was a company called Volt. They were acquired by Hillrom, but everybody on the booth wore pink scrubs. And it was clever because first of all, it really stood out. I mean, it was a really sort of like almost like a violet pink that was it was attractive. But the other thing is wearing the scrubs signaled we're all about nurses and we're all about nursing, which was kind of the origins of their solution. And it was a very clever branding device. And I think actually when they went on site, they wore the pink scrubs. So it was a very clever way of doing it. But I loved your idea there of Amy, of the orange shoes, just like something like that. That's your brand colors. What are some of the most common mistakes you see exhibitors making?
My biggest peeve is trying to spell everything out on every available surface of your booth property. I was once at HIMSS and there was a medium-sized booth that literally was just covered in bullet points. And I have no idea what you're about. I don't want to read all that. If you look at the larger companies, they keep it short and sweet. It's a simple sentence, usually with maybe a supporting line, if that. Now, again, to be fair, those are established brands oftentimes, and they don't have to spell it out so much for you.
Creating barriers between you and the attendees with furniture. So even if you are in a 10 by 10, an 8 by 8 in a small ballroom, if I had anything to do with the show, you probably won't even be lucky enough to have a full-size table. I'll probably you have to get a small little table that's just big enough for you and your laptop. Because heaven forbid you put that table between you and the attendees, and now you're sitting down, you need to be greeting them in that booth on your feet as well, meeting them at eye level as much as humanly possible, because that's the worst.
First and foremost, events are about relationships and experience, not just leads. Yes, we need pipeline. We've got to figure out attribution. But if you reduce a major industry event just to a lead scanning exercise, you're missing the opportunity to build trust, to reinforce your brand, and most of all, to create meaningful human moments that build long-term relationships. Second, if you're going to have a theme, it has to carry through the entire journey, before, during, and after the show. If it only works on the booth wall, it's not a strategy, it's just decoration. The best themes amplify your story and make follow-up easier and more cohesive. Number 3, booth design and choreography matter more than most teams realize. Don't cover every surface with bullet points. Don't hide behind tables. Stand up, assign roles. Have someone owning the first hello in the aisle. And make sure your team is aligned and prepped before you ever step onto the show floor. And finally, be intentional about swag and collateral. Nobody needs another cheap pen. And if you're going to give away something, try to make it meaningful, memorable, and maybe sustainable as well. And maybe think twice before printing 5,500 brochures that are probably going to end up in the trash. Amy and Pepper, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your honesty. I found it really valuable, and I hope you out there listening found it useful too. And by the way, if you did find this helpful, again, please subscribe and give this podcast a thumbs up, because, you know, if you give it an approval, it'll help more people like you find the podcast. And lastly, if you think you know somebody on your team who's going to find this useful and practical, go ahead and share it. There's a share button on the application and you can just email them this episode. So thank you to you for listening, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.